All right, let's talk about something that, let's be honest, almost nobody wants to talk about: the fear of death. It's this feeling that's so universal, it basically connects every single human who has ever lived. In this explainer, we're going to unpack that fear, try to figure out where it even comes from, and explore how we might just be able to change our relationship with it.
So let's just jump right in with the big question, right? Why are we so incredibly afraid of the one thing in life that is absolutely 100% certain to happen? It's a huge paradox, one that thinkers have been wrestling with for centuries, and it's really at the heart of what we're exploring today. So, where do we even begin with something this big? Well, first, by just recognizing that if you feel this fear, you're in good company. You're basically in a club with, well, everyone. This isn't some personal quirk or a modern anxiety, it's a fundamental part of being human.
And that's the thing, right? This feeling, it connects us across all cultures, all of history. It's a shared baseline for our species. And really understanding that, truly accepting that this is a collective experience, that's the very first step toward looking at this fear in a whole new way.
You know, this Mark Twain quote, it just flips the whole script, doesn't it? It introduces this fascinating idea. What if the fear of death is really just a fear of an unlived life? The whole concept here is that a life lived to the fullest doesn't really leave much room for that anxiety. It kind of suggests the antidote to fearing the end is to get crazy focused on the living part.
Now, while a general awareness of our own mortality is totally normal, for some people that fear gets dialed way, way up. It crosses a line into something much more intense, something that actually has a clinical name: nectophobia.
So the clinical term is nectophobia, and it's defined as an extreme or kind of irrational fear of death or things associated with it. The key words here are extreme and irrational. They're the real tell, signaling that this goes way beyond a typical or even a healthy awareness that life has an end.
And this is where we need to draw a really clear line in the sand. See, on one hand, a healthy awareness of death can actually be a great motivator. It can push us to live more meaningfully. But nectophobia, that's the total opposite. It's debilitating. The dread becomes so persistent that it actively gets in the way of happiness, and it leads people to avoid even thinking about the topic at all costs.
So what's actually driving this fear? Where does it come from? Well, it's not just one thing. It's more like a really complex cocktail of psychology, biology, and even the stories that our culture tells us.
But before we even get into the causes, I want to make something crystal clear. Feeling this fear is not a personal failure. It is not a sign of weakness, not at all. It's a deeply, deeply human response, one that's wired right into our biology and shaped by all of our life experiences.
The roots of this fear are, man, they're deep and they're all tangled up. Part of it is just pure evolution, right? We're literally hardwired for survival, so anything that threatens that feels like the enemy. But then you start layering on all the psychological stuff, that terror of the unknown, the fear of losing control, and ultimately the final loss of yourself. And on top of all that, our culture has laid down these powerful stories about what happens next, or what doesn't. And those narratives can either soothe this fear or, turn the volume up to 11.
And when you actually break it down like this, it is incredibly revealing. A whopping 40% of this fear isn't even about being dead. It's about the unknown, that total, complete uncertainty of it all. And when you add in the fear of losing control and the fear of suffering, you start to realize something pretty profound. For a lot of us, the anxiety is less about the destination itself and way more about the journey to get there.
Okay, so we've defined the fear, we've looked at where it comes from. Now for the most important part, right? How can we live with it? How do we manage this anxiety and stop it from running our lives?
And this brings us to probably the most powerful idea in this whole explainer. The goal isn't to somehow eliminate the fear. I mean, that's pretty much impossible. The real goal is to integrate it, to actually listen to what it's telling you about what you value, and then use that energy to live with more intention.
So how do we actually do that? What are the practical steps? Well, this whole path really starts with just acknowledging the fear instead of constantly fighting it. Once you can accept that it's there, you can start to channel that nervous energy into creating personal meaning in your life. Things like mindfulness can anchor you in the present, while focusing on your connections with other people reminds you of the life you have right now. And finally, thinking about your legacy, The positive impact you leave behind. That shifts the focus from your ending to what's going to endure.
The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, he just gives us the ultimate reframe here. He says, the real tragedy isn't death, but never truly beginning to live. It's the perfect summary of everything we've talked about. The best answer to our fear of dying is to be fully, completely engaged in the act of living.
So I'll leave you with this to reflect on. If you could turn down the volume on this fear, even just a little bit, how would you live differently? What would you do, or create, or say, starting today? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.